The old radio is drug out on the carport. A friend of mine helped me get it out here. And I'm going to go ahead and strip this top. It's in pretty bad shape. The sun is not working with me here on this camera. It's in pretty bad shape. You can see a lot of the finish is missing here. So I like to strip finish off of veneer using lacquer thinner. I don't like sandpaper. I just give me a can of lacquer thinner down at Lowe's and then pour a little bit into a plastic bowl and one of these old foam rubber brush things. You can buy a bag of them usually at a discount store for practically nothing. I just soak it on in there, stick it on in the and then just lay it on the cabinet like so. Just paint it on, let it set for a while, and it will dissolve. Eventually, it'll after a little while, it'll dissolve the finish. And if you have a few tough spots, you can use these Stay Bright pads. I like the Stay Bright pads. Now, sometimes you're going to run into a finish that just will not come off with lacquer thinner. I've run into those. I've tried acetone. I've mixed lacquer thinner with acetone. And sometimes the finish just does not want to come off. So in a case like that, you got to use stripper. Don't be afraid to use stripper. With the third wipe down, we should be ready to go with the pastewood filler. Now, before I do the pastewood filler, though, I've got a chunk missing right here. And I've got a very, very small piece missing back here. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. I might just leave that tiny little piece. You know, these old radios are old. This one's like 75 years old or something like that. And it needs a little battle scar here and there from a bygone era, and I think that's going to be it. But this one here, I think I might be able to come up with a piece to fit in there. We'll see. Okay, we're ready to rock and roll here. We're going to pour us a bunch of this old lacquer thinner on there, soak that rag good, and then I'm going to start wiping down. Wipe. I'm going to get much of that stuff off as I can. I'm going to go over it really good. Getting down into the grooves a little better along here is easily accomplished with one of these brushes. You just kind of pour a little lacquer thinner on them and then get down in there and just scrub away, and it'll remove almost every bit of it. Well, that's it from beginning to end using lacquer thinner. Once I determined that it would in fact take the finish off. Beginning to end, 40 minutes. Real easy way to do it. It's bright and early the next morning, and I'm getting ready to patch this little spot right here. And keep in mind that when you do a little patch like that, you know, we're hobbyists, okay? Primarily we're hobbyists. We're not professional woodworkers. So the chances are when I get done, if you look at it real close, you'll probably still see where I put the patch in. But it won't be all that obvious. Not a big deal, you know. We're not pros, most of us. Now I keep a collection of thin wood around that I've had over the years. I keep it in a drawer away from everything else. This is just thin plywood. Little pieces that I use to, if I have a large crack, I can stick it in there, break off a little piece, put it in there and glue it, fill in the crack. I also keep bags of veneer. I have several other bags in there of little pieces of veneer. And out of this bag, I was able to get this piece right here. This piece right here, if you flip it over, it's a different color. And I think that's just about going to fit in there as far as the shade goes. It'll be slightly off, but all I have to do now is take this sandpaper I have in this bag, just start gently working this thing until I get some sort of a reasonably good fit in there. I'm also going to take my knife and trim out some of that edge down in there. It'll keep me from getting all the way in. Well, there we go. What I'm going to do now is put some glue underneath this in here, some Elmer's glue, and put a little glue on the back side. I'll sand this down a little bit so I have a better grip. and I'm going to let it dry. Both, I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to let the glue on this patch piece dry. The glue is dry in the hole, and the glue is dry on the patch. And you're probably wondering, geez, he should have clamped that together while it was wet. Why did he wait till it's dry? It'll never work that way. Yes, it will. All I need to do is fit that baby in there nice and snug, push it in as tight as it'll go, and then take this iron and iron it right down. What'll happen is the glue in the hole and the glue on the back of the patch will fuse together. You don't need clamps. In this case, I didn't have a clamp long enough anyway, so it's an old trick to iron on. Now this veneer is actually 3 pieces. 1, 2, 3 that they put on at the factory. And this piece here is risen up just a little bit. Let me get over here, maybe you can see it a little bit better from this side, I don't know. But anyway, it's a little bit uneven in this area right here. So after I iron this little patch into there, get that ironed in, then I'm going to go ahead and run the iron along that seam also, and maybe I can cause it to even up a little bit. Oh boy, she ironed down nice and smooth, nice and smooth. That's nice and even now. That worked great. I even ran it over this seam over on this side too, all along that seam right there. Looks good. Now all I have to do is trim this edge off. I'll just score it a couple times. Now what I like to do is I don't like to score it right on the line. Score it a little bit further out so you got just a little bit left, and then take a piece of sandpaper and sand it down to where it's even with this. Okay, it's been scored. I scored almost all the way through. Now all I got to do is just kind of snap it up and down a little bit like that, and it comes right off. That's it. Now I'll take this sandpaper right here and just kind of get over here in the sun and we can see a little better. I'll just take the sandpaper and just kind of go back and forth a little bit until I get it nice and even. And there's the final product as far as initial fit. Now I took a little bit, it was a little bit uneven because the veneer that I replaced, that I patched with, was just a tad thinner than this original veneer here. So I sanded it down just enough to where it's fairly level across there, fairly even. It's going to be hard to see. I mean, you'll be able to see it, but it won't be a glaring hole, which was there before. It's time to put some paste wood filler on here. A lot of people say it all at once, paste wood filler, but it's paste wood filler. I like to use Constantines. A while back I bought some natural and some brown and dark oak. And about the only one I've used so far has been the brown. Now all you need to do is have like an old credit card of some kind. This is a Walmart gift card that's no longer any good. And you need a little bit of mineral spirits. A coarse cloth. A friend of mine is a farmer at work, and he gives me a couple of clean feed bags every once in a while, and I cut them up into pieces because burlap is nice and coarse. It does the job. You'll see how we use that. Now this stuff has oil that comes to the top. I don't know if you can see it down in there, but it's kind of oiled. You have to go ahead and mix it up, and that's what we're going to do with this screwdriver. The purpose of the paste wood filler is to fill all these little cracks and little crevices and all the little wood grain depression. You can't hardly see them, but they're there. And what you want is a smooth surface when we're done. And once it's smooth, then we can go ahead and put the finish on, and the finish will be a lot smoother. So let's get to filling. You want to mix this stuff to a consistency of about between toothpaste and mayonnaise, I say. A little bit runny if possible. It goes in there a lot better. You don't want it too thick. Some people like it thick, some people don't. I like to fill a radio twice. So here's the way it's done. Let's go ahead. I'm going to show you a little example right here in the center. Just going to plop it out on there with one of the wifey's spoons. She's always happy for me to go in her drawer and get the spoons out. She likes me doing that. Anyway, we'll take the old gift card, and what we're going to do is go around in all different kinds of directions like that. And just kind of smooth this stuff out. Spread it out. Spread it out. Let it run down in those little cracks and crevices. Just work it, work it, work it. With the grain, against the grain, in circles. Doesn't matter. That's what we're going to do. Normally I start from one end, but I wanted you to see this. Smush it down in the deeper spots if you find them. Just kind of bend that old card down in there. Get that stuff down in there. Take your time. There's no rush. It does dry fairly quickly, so don't mix up like a big batch of it and expect it to stay nice and smooth like this, because you'll have to be adding more mineral spirits to it. But that's what we're going to do to the entire top, and it will help color the wood at the same time. This is the brown I'm using, as I said. Once the top is done, you can do the edges, not with a scraper, but just take a towel and kind of dip it in, or just a rag of your choice. Just kind of dip it in and just kind of rub it in like that. It does the same thing, makes it feel real nice. Remember, you don't want to have globs and globs of this stuff left over when you're done putting it on. You want it to be smoothed out pretty good. Now, before it completely dries, this is where we use the coarse burlap, or you could use anything you want. If it's coarse, go across the grain. You don't want to go with the grain. If you go with the grain to remove the excess, you stand a chance of picking up the filler you just put in the grain. But if you go across it, it'll stay. So it's just, don't let it dry too much. And this is another reason you don't put it on so heavy that you can't get it off. So it's just a matter of going back and forth, cleaning it up like I'm doing right here. And then, after you've gone back and forth and got most of the excess off, then you can go ahead and go with the grain very lightly, very lightly. So that's what I'm going to be doing throughout the whole top. Well, there it is, all removed all the way around the edge, and already you can see it's getting a nice tone to where it almost matches the rest of the cabinet, and we haven't even hardly got started. I'm going to let this dry now for 24 hours, and tomorrow you'll see all little kinds of white lines all over it where it's filled into wood grain. It's now been a little over 24 hours since applying the pastewood filler, and now I've got some 800 grit wet dry black silicon carbide sandpaper, they call it, and I'm going to use it dry, and I'm only going to use it to knock off the rises in the filler. Very light sanding, very light sanding. I am not sanding the wood, I am sanding the filler, and as you can see, it begins to materialize as I sand it. You can't hardly see it until you go over it with the sandpaper, and all of a sudden all the little spots we filled begin to pop up. Well, that's the best I can do as far as the initial sanding. Now we'll whip up another batch of pastewood and fill it a second time. Your professionals, they only have to fill once, but I'm one of these dumb bunnies, I got to do it twice. I've actually done it 3 times.